Have you ever witnessed a fragile prey beast whirl and confront a top predator? Absurd, isn't it? Sheer suicide. And yet there's something in that instant, something that steals your breath, that forces your pulse to stutter. That's what it felt like when the human called Jack Harper stood against the whole Craxian armada. Don't give me that stare. I know what's running through your head. Just another inflated legend about those notorious humans. But no, believe me, I was there. I watched it unfold with my own 4 eyes. And even now I struggle to believe what I saw. I am Quas, a Vidian. Blue skin, 4 eyes, communication tendrils. Nothing remarkable. I served as a translator on the Galactic Council's diplomatic vessel, the Harmonious Exchange. Impressive name, though in truth it was little more than a drifting conference hall in the void. The year by human reckoning was 2157. The Craxian Empire had been spreading for decades, swallowing lesser civilizations like snacks before a feast. They were a warrior species, towering, muscle-bound, their exoskeletons shrugging off most conventional arms. Their creed was blunt: the strong devour the weak. To them, that was the natural law of existence. Quaz, pay attention, Captain Lorry snapped during a briefing. The human ambassador arrives today. I flicked my tendrils in acknowledgement. Humans were still newcomers to the Galactic Council, barely 50 years among us. Most species saw them as primitive, adolescent in technology, only just warp-capable. Physically, they were unimpressive. No claws, no natural armor, no heightened senses. Just soft, fragile creatures with a strangely reckless appetite for violence. "What's so remarkable about this human?" I asked, more to pass the time than from any real curiosity. Lori narrowed all 6 of her eyes. Jack Harper is their final diplomatic card before the Craxians reach their home system. The Council has Jack Harper. Arrivas, the Council had refused military intervention, leaving the humans to face annihilation alone. I gave a derisive snort. Then they are doomed. Show respect, Lori hissed. Primitive or not, they've sent their finest negotiator. When Jack Harper finally stepped aboard the Harmonious Exchange, my first reaction was disappointment. Average human height, meaning short by galactic measure. No cybernetic augmentations, no exoskeletal plating, nothing to mark him as extraordinary. He wore plain black clothing with a blue sash, their so-called diplomatic uniform. Only his eyes stood out, sharp green, scanning the chamber as though absorbing every detail. "Welcome aboard the Harmonious Exchange, Ambassador Harper," Lori said with formal precision. The human bared his teeth in that unsettling gesture his kind used as friendliness. "Thank you, Captain. Please, call me Jack." The translator carried his words clearly, but there was something behind them the device could not replicate. Warmth, or perhaps unshakable confidence. Either way, I distrusted it. "The Craxian delegation arrives tomorrow," I told him, puffing my tendrils with self-importance. "You have until then to prepare your plea." Jack's green eyes locked onto mine. "Not a plea, friend," he said calmly. "A negotiation." The negotiator's eye laughed outright. I couldn't help it. The Craxians did not negotiate with species they classified as prey. "Everyone negotiates," Jack replied evenly. "It's only a matter of finding the right leverage." Captain Lorry's eyes narrowed in irritation. "Quaz will escort you to your quarters, Ambassador. You'll have access to our database to prepare." Jack inclined his head in thanks and fell into step beside me as I guided him through the exchange's winding corridors. I decided, perhaps out of pity, to offer him a dose of realism. "Listen, human Jack. I've witnessed this cycle countless times. The Craxians will make demands. You'll refuse. They'll threaten. You'll yield something small. They'll demand more. And in the end, they will claim your entire system anyway. That's the pattern. That's how it works." To my surprise, Jack showed no offense. Instead, those green eyes flicked toward me with unsettling calm. "What's your name again?" he asked. Quaz. Well, Quaz, he said, almost warmly. Thank you for the warning, but everyone negotiates humans, Jack told me, had a saying. Past performance is not indicative of future results. I rolled all four of my eyes. Your species coined that phrase to justify fraudulent investment schemes. That made him laugh, a deep, unguarded sound that rang down the corridor. Touché. You've studied human history. It's my job to understand context, I replied. I'm a translator. His smile lingered. Then you should also know humans have a history of defying impossible odds. We halted outside his assigned quarters. The Craxian delegation includes War Commander Draw, I warned. He's conquered 17 systems. He wears the skulls of leaders who defied him on his belt. Jack didn't even blink. Sounds like he's compensating for something. I didn't recognize the term compensating in that context, but his tone carried no respect. You are either very brave, I said slowly, or very stupid. Jack's smile returned, though this time it never touched his eyes. Often, he murmured. There's little difference between the two. The next day, my assignment took me to the negotiation chamber, a circular hall dominated by a broad round table, a stage where empires decided the fates of worlds. Confrontation with the Craxians symbolic of equality, which was a joke considering what was about to happen. The Craxian delegation arrived first 5 warriors in full battle armor, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the lights. War Commander Draw was a full head taller than the others, his armor adorned with trophies from previous conquests, small bones, fragments of technology-dried flesh. Disgusting but effective at creating fear. Jack arrived precisely on time alone. Still in his simple black uniform, he showed no reaction to the intimidating sight of the Craxian's ambassador. Harper of Earth, I announced formally. War Commander Draw of the Craxian Empire, growled their translator, a small hovering device that conveyed Draw's clicking speech into standard galactic. Jack sat down across from Draw. Thank you for agreeing to this. Meeting Draw's mandibles clicked in what I recognized as amusement. We did not agree. We were curious to see what a doomed species would offer before extinction. Then let's satisfy your curiosity. Jack said pleasantly, we propose a mutually beneficial arrangement. The only arrangement is your complete surrender. Draw responded, your colonies, your resources, your planet, all will serve the Empire, and if we refuse, Jack asked, still eerily calm. Draw leaned forward. Then we take it anyway, and instead of enslaving your people, we consume them. Your choice only determines whether humans become slaves or food. I watched Jack carefully. Most species would be showing fear now raised. Fur secreted defensive chemicals, flared membranes. Humans weren't good at hiding. Their emotions either usually turning different colors or leaking fluid from their eyes, but Jack showed nothing. That's one option. Jack agreed. Here's another. You bypass the Sol system entirely. In exchange, we provide you with something more valuable. Then our planet Drax's mandibles clicked rapidly. Craxian lauder? What could you possibly offer? Jack placed a small data cube on the table information, the complete defensive capabilities of the Arcturian Confederacy, shield frequencies, patrol routes, weapon specifications, everything you need to conquer them in one swift campaign. The room went silent. The Arcturians were a major power far stronger than humans. They weren't allies with Earth, but they weren't enemies either. Why would you betray another? Species asked, Dre suspicious, but clearly interested survival. Jack said simply, the Arcturians refused our alliance proposal last year. They left us to face you alone. Why should we protect them? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was unheard of. Selling out another civilization to save your own. It was cowardly, despicable, and possibly genius. Dre picked up the data cube. If this information is false, it's not, Jack assured him, verify it yourself. The Arcturian system has more resources than Earth, and would bring more prestige to your empire, and conquering them would open a direct path to the Centauri alliance the Craxians conferred among themselves in their clicking language. Noticed Jack watching them intently, as if he understood finally. Draw turned back. We will verify. The diplomatic strategy. This information, if it proves accurate, we may consider your proposal. That's all I ask, Jack said with a slight bow of his head. The meeting adjourned, and I escorted Jack back to his quarters. You lost your mind, I hissed once we were alone. You just sold out the Arcturians. Jack smiled. Did I heard you, everyone. Heard you. You gave them defensive plans, patrol routes. I gave them something. Jack agreed. Whether it's what I claimed remains to be seen. I stared at him. You're bluffing against the Craxians. They will skin you alive, literally. But they will check the data first. That buys us time. Time for what your fleet is. No match for theirs. Jack's expression turned serious. Time for me to speak with the other delegations on this station over the next 3 days. Jack requested meetings with every diplomatic delegation aboard the Vulans, the Taslanieven, the notoriously reclusive Pell. I was assigned as his translator for most of these. Meetings which gave me a front-row seat to whatever game he was playing to the Vulans. He spoke of ancient human philosophers and their parallels to Vulan thought, to the militant Teslani had discussed famous human battle strategies and honored their warrior code to the Pell. He simply sat in silence for 30 minutes. Then, for their wisdom, I couldn't figure out what he was doing until I overheard him speaking with Captain Lori. The Galactic Council has made its position clear. Lori was saying, we cannot intervene in a conflict between. Through Vulan trading routes, using unregistered quantum channels, a violation of galactic communication, treaties, a third image, Craxian scouts landing on a small moon, and you established a forward base on Pell sacred ground, violating religious protection. Statutes. Drax's rage was palpable. These are minor infractions. They do not change anything individually. No, agreed Jack, but collectively they trigger Article 7 of the Galactic Charter multiple violations by a single power against 3 or more member. Races constitutes a pattern of hostile intent. Captain Lori entered the room flanked by Council Security, or Commander Dra. She announced formally. The Galactic Council has received evidence of multiple charter violations by the Craxian Empyrean Emergency. Session has been called. Dra turned his rage on Jack. You planned this. First victory, I created an opportunity. Jack corrected you, walked into it willingly. This changes nothing, snarled Dra. The Council will debate for months. My fleet will reach Earth. In days, Jack didn't seem concerned about that. While the Council debates, all member races have authorized temporary defensive support for Earth under the Mutual Protection Clause. The display changed again, showing multiple fleet signatures moving toward the Sol system. Vulrian Teslani, even the Pell UC War Commander. I didn't need to sell out anyone. I just needed to remind everyone that your conquests only continue because the rest of the galaxy stands apart united. They can stop you. The look on Drax's face was something I will never forget. Rage, yes, but also something I'd never seen in a Craxian before. Uncertainty. The Craxian Empire does not retreat, he declared, but his mandibles trembled slightly. No one's asking you to retreat, Jack said reasonably. Just change course. There are unclaimed systems in the Cygnus Arm. The Council would recognize your right to those territories. I watched in amazement as Jack Harper, this unremarkable human, single-handedly reshaped galactic politics in a matter of days. He hadn't fired a shot, hadn't threatened, hadn't even raised his voice. He'd simply found the leverage points and pressed as Dra and his warriors left to consult with their high command. I approached Jack. That was impressive. I admitted it was necessary. He replied, how did you know they'd test the false data immediately? Jack shrugged. Craxians believe in strength above all. They couldn't risk looking weak by waiting. Their psychology made their actions predictable, and all those meetings with the other delegations. Humans are newcomers here. He said, I needed to build relationships quickly, find common ground. Everyone has something they value, something they fear losing. Find that and you find your allies. I shook my head in wonder. For a primitive species, you are surprisingly devious. Jack laughed. We have had a lot of practice fighting each other. Turns out those skills transfer. Well, to galactic politics, later that night I found Jack in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. The Craxians have changed course. I told him the Council is formalizing the new territorial agreements. Now he nodded, but didn't look away from the viewport. You don't seem as happy as someone who just saved their homeworld should be. I observed. This was a temporary solution, he said quietly. The Craxians will be back eventually, and next time they will be more careful. So what will you do? He turned. To me, those green eyes reflecting the starlight keep finding ways to survive. That's what humans do best. I realized then what made humans different. Not their technology or their physical attributes. It was their perspective. Where other species saw overwhelming odds, humans saw puzzles to be solved, challenges to overcome. The galaxy will be watching. You know, I warned him. One victory against the Craxians has put a target on your species. Jack smiled, that unsettling, tooth-bearing smile. Good, let them watch. They might learn something. As I left him there, gazing at the stars that had almost witnessed his species' extinction. I couldn't help but think he was right. We would all be watching the humans now, and something told me this was just the beginning. 5 years passed, 5 relatively peaceful years, which in galactic terms is barely enough time for most species to approve the meeting agenda, let alone implement actual change. But humans, as I was learning, operate on a different time scale. I had requested a permanent assignment as liaison to Earth's 5 years later, diplomatic corps, partly out of curiosity, partly because working with humans was never boring, and partly because, well, I had developed what humans call a soft spot for these strange, contradictory creatures after the Craxian incident. Jack Harper had been promoted to Earth's chief diplomatic officer. We had worked together on numerous smaller negotiations since then. Nothing galaxy-shaking, just the routine business of a young species finding its place among the stars. Until the transmission came, I was in Jack's office on Earth. When it arrived, a simple office, nothing fancy. Just a desk made of actual wood, a status symbol off-world, a few paper books extremely rare, and a large window overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The blue water reminded me of home, which I think was why Jack had requested me as his permanent translator. Quaz, stop daydreaming and look at this, Jack said, interrupting my thoughts. I blinked all 4 eyes in sequence. Sorry, what am I looking at? He gestured to his display screen message from the Galactic Council. Priority 1. I leaned forward. Priority 1. Communications were rare. The last one had announced the extinction of the Boros, a peaceful race of philosophers who had been caught in a supernova. The Craxians have developed a new weapon. I read aloud, a genetic pathogen designed to target specific DNA markers. Jack's face had that focused expression I'd come to recognize. No fear, just intense concentration. Keep reading. They have threatened to deploy it against several species. I looked up in shock, including humans. Jack nodded grimly. They have been busy. This isn't just revenge for our last encounter. This is a new strategy. The Council is convening an emergency session. I continued. All targeted species are requested to send representatives. When 2 days from now, Jack was already tapping commands into his communication device and book us passage on the fastest available ship. We leave tonight. New galactic threats. You want me to come? I asked, surprised. Of course, you are the best translator I've worked with, and your insight into council politics is invaluable. I felt a strange warm sensation in my central cavity. What humans might call pride, the harmonious exchange, is currently in orbit. I will request priority boarding 2 days. Later, we arrived at the Council's current location, a massive space station orbiting a neutral gas giant in the Proxima sector. The Council chamber was packed with representatives from over 30 species, all buzzing with fearful conversation. The Vulians were there, their first standing on end, in anxiety. The stoic Taslani sat silently, weapons conspicuously displayed, despite council regulations even. The Pell had emerged from their habitual seclusion, their crystalline bodies reflecting the chamber's lights in dazzling patterns. Quite the gathering, Jack murmured as we found our seats, every major power and half the minor ones. The Craxians have threatened all of them, I replied. This pathogen doesn't discriminate between council members and non-members. That's what concerns me, Jackie said. The Craxians aren't stupid. They must know this would unite the council against them before I could respond. The session was called to order. Grand Arbiter Zilv, a gaseous entity contained in an ornate floating sphere, moved to the center of the Yay. Chamber steam delegates Zil's melodious voice reverberated through the translator nodes. We face an unprecedented threat. The Craxian Empire has developed a genetic weapon capable of targeting multiple species simultaneously. All the projections appeared showing molecular structures I didn't understand, but Jack was studying them intently. Their demand is simple. Zil continued complete autonomy in the Western Spiral, no council interference, no trade restrictions, no military limitations. Theroar filled the chamber. The Western Spiral contained dozens of inhabited systems and hundreds of resource-rich planets, giving the Craxians free reign. There would essentially split the galaxy in two. We cannot negotiate with those who threaten genocide, declared the Vulan ambassador. We should strike now before they deploy. The weapon countered the Tlani representative hand resting on her ceremonial blade. Arguments erupted across the chamber. Some advocated immediate military action. Others proposed containment strategies. A few even suggested surrender as the only way to ensure survival through it all. Jack remained silent. Emergency council meeting, still studying the molecular projections with a furrowed brow. What are you thinking? I asked. Quietly, something doesn't add up, he replied, not looking away from the projections. The Craxiansari, warriors, not scientists. This level of genetic engineering is beyond them. They could have forced captured scientists to develop it, I suggested. Jack shook his head. Maybe, but look, at the molecular structure. Notice anything unusual? I stared at the swirling patterns. I'm not a geneticist. Jack, neither am I. But I've studied enough biology to know that this pathogen couldn't possibly target all the species they are threatening. The genetic variance is too great. The debate continued to rage around us, growing more heated by the minute. Finally, Jack stood up. Earth requests to address the council. He announced Grand Arbiter Zil's containment sphere bobbed in acknowledgement. The council recognizes Ambassador Harper of Earth. Jack stepped to the central platform. All eyes, stalks, sensory organs, and visual receptors turned toward him. Steamed delegates. Understand your fear, it mirrors our own, but before we decide on a course of action, we should verify that the threat is real. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The molecular structure of this